I remember the day she slid that wedding brochure across the table like it was a menu at some fancy restaurant. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and her voice danced with dreamy tones as she spoke about ballrooms, chandeliers, and imported flowers flown in from France. Me? I smiled. Not because I was thrilled about spending that kind of money, but because I loved her. I wanted her to feel special, to have the day she always dreamed of. She used to say, if the wedding is perfect, the marriage will be too. I believed her. I wanted to. And so, I nodded, swallowed my doubts, and said, let's make it happen. But behind that smile, my mind was racing. Before we dive into the story, we'll love to thank you for your continued support to this channel. If you enjoy this story and stories like this, kindly subscribe and hit on the notification button so you don't miss any of our stories. Our shout out goes to Rowan from the Appalachian Mountains. We will love to hear from you also. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments section. We'll love to give you a shout out in our next video. Now let's begin. I had a steady job, decent, but nothing luxurious. A few savings, sure, but nowhere near enough to fund a wedding that cost more than some people's first homes. Still, she had a way of making you feel like any doubt was a betrayal. So, I took on more hours, working weekends and holidays, even picking up night shifts at a warehouse just outside town. I was burning out slowly, but I told myself it was for love. For her. We booked the venue 6 months in advance. A marble-columned estate that reeked of wealth and old money. She wanted gold-trimmed invitations, designer gowns for her bridesmaids, and a string quartet to play as she walked down the aisle. Every time I asked if we could simplify something, just one thing, she'd look at me with those disappointed eyes and say, I thought you wanted this wedding as much as I do. That was her gift, guilt. She wore it better than her diamond engagement ring. And so, I stopped asking questions and started saying yes. Yes to $100 wedding cake tasting. Yes to imported orchids that had to be refrigerated. Yes to a photography team that charged more than my monthly salary. I even sold the car I inherited from my dad just to cover a catering deposit. That car meant something to me, memories of road trips, of late-night drives of him. But when she said, it's just a thing, your dad wouldn't mind, I convinced myself she was right. Friends started noticing. They'd ask if I was okay, if I was sleeping enough, if everything was all right between us. I brushed them off, told them I was fine. Love just takes effort, I'd say. But inside, I was falling apart. I didn't realize it back then, but I was pouring every ounce of my energy into building a fantasy that only she would benefit from. I was the architect, the laborer, and the silent investor in someone else's dream. The wedding day came, and she looked stunning. I won't lie. Everyone gasped as she entered the ballroom in her designer gown, smiling like royalty. The guests were all dressed to the nines, the food was gourmet, and the champagne flowed like a river. I watched her float around the room, laughing and hugging people I barely knew. Every now and then, she'd glance at me, not with love, but with expectation, as if making sure I was still doing my part as the man who funded the show. There was no intimacy between us that night. No quiet moment to just breathe and take it all in. She was too busy posting curated photos on Instagram, tagging every luxury brand she could remember. I was just there. A prop in a fantasy she had crafted long before I ever showed up. But I still held on to hope. I told myself that once the wedding was over, we'd have a real life, a simple one. We'd go back to eating ramen on the couch and binge-watching old sitcoms. That this was just a phase. But I was wrong. The honeymoon wasn't a chance to relax. It was another production. More expenses. More expectations. She booked everything in her name, but every bill still found its way to my email. I didn't complain. Not once. I just kept paying. Because love, right? When we got back, the real silence began. She stopped asking how my day was. She stopped waiting up for me when I came home late from work. And she definitely stopped saying thank you. She started staying out late with friends from Pilates. Her phone was always on silent. She locked her screen now. And her smile, the one that used to light up when I entered the room, was gone, replaced by a distant, almost irritated expression any time I tried to speak. I had become invisible in my own marriage. But it wasn't until the credit card bills stacked so high I couldn't breathe that I realized she never loved me for who I was. She loved what I could provide. I was the wallet, the workhorse, the background music to her grand performance. And the moment I couldn't keep up with the fantasy, she'd change the script. And change it, she did. One evening, she came home, tossed her keys on the marble counter I had paid for, and said calmly, "I think we should get a divorce." No anger, no tears, just a business transaction. As if we were canceling a subscription service she no longer found useful. I was stunned, not because I didn't see it coming, but because she didn't even try to pretend. She didn't say she was unhappy. She didn't say we needed therapy. She just said she was done, like I was a failed investment, like I had expired. The morning after she asked for the divorce, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the blank wall. The silence was deafening. No good morning. No explanation, no second thoughts. Just the lingering scent of her expensive perfume as she walked past me like I was a stranger in my own home. The same home I nearly lost sleep over trying to pay for. The same place where I had imagined building a life, raising a family, growing old. And yet, there she was, sipping coffee, scrolling through her phone, completely unaffected, like she'd been rehearsing this moment long before I ever saw it coming. It was the way she said it that hurt the most. So emotionless. So calculated. "I think we should get a divorce." Like it was a logical conclusion she'd come to after a board meeting with herself. No tears. No arguments. Not even the decency to pretend it pained her. I asked why. She replied, "You've changed. You're not the same man I married." I almost laughed at that. Of course I wasn't the same man. I was exhausted, broken, worn thin from trying to keep up with her never-ending appetite for status. But I didn't say that. I just sat there, letting the weight of her words crush every last sliver of hope I'd been holding on to. She filed the papers that same week. Quick, efficient. Like she already had the lawyer on standby. And it made sense, her sudden lack of affection, her long nights out, her shift in tone. It wasn't random. It was strategy. She had been mentally divorced long before she ever opened her mouth to say it. I was just the last to know. And that hurt more than anything else. The financial toll hit me like a freight train. My bank account was dry. My credit cards were maxed out, and I still hadn't recovered from the loans I took just to fund that so-called fairy tale wedding. She offered no help, no compromise, just demands half the remaining assets, the furniture, the jewelry, and even the dog we picked out together. Her lawyer said she deserved compensation for emotional labor. I nearly choked. Emotional labor? She had been emotionally absent since the honeymoon. But the courts don't care about emotional truth. They care about paper trails, signatures, and who shows up with the better lawyer. And here's the twisted part. Through all of this, she still posted throwbacks from our wedding. Pictures with captions like, "What a perfect day," as if it was some highlight reel in a life she was still proud of. Never mind that I was the one who paid for every detail. Never mind that I was drowning while she flaunted a past she had already walked away from. I started to wonder if she ever really loved me, or if I was just a stepping stone to the image she wanted to project. I kept working, barely getting by, cutting corners just to eat. I sold my watch, the last birthday gift from my father before he passed. I canceled my gym membership, stopped going out, and even moved into a cheaper apartment after she took the house. Still, she showed no remorse. Her new life began before our marriage had even ended. She was already hosting brunches, going on wine tours, and from the looks of it, dating someone new. Some guy in finance, I heard. Fitting. My friends told me to move on, to focus on healing. But healing isn't linear when betrayal stabs you where you thought you were safe. It festers. It whispers questions into your mind at night. Was I not enough? Was I just blind? Did I do this to myself? And the worst part? I had no answers. Just the echo of her voice saying, "You're not the same man I married." Damn right I wasn't. I was the man who broke himself to build a palace she could walk away from. I started journaling. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. Every emotion, every humiliation, every bank notification that reminded me I had nothing left, I wrote it all down. And in those late-night entries, somewhere between the anger and the sadness, something began to shift. I stopped writing about her and started writing about me, about who I was before all this, about the dreams I buried under wedding invoices and silent suffering. And I realized I may have lost the marriage, but I hadn't lost myself. I had simply forgotten who I was. That realization was the first step. The second came when I got a call from an old college buddy named Marcus. We hadn't spoken in years, but he remembered I had once talked about building an online consulting firm. Something to help small businesses market themselves without breaking the bank. "Still interested?" he asked. I was hesitant. I was broke, humiliated, and drained. But I said yes. Not because I felt ready, but because I needed something to live for that wasn't her. We started small. Real small. Just two guys sharing ideas over coffee and stolen Wi-Fi. But it was real. And for the first time in a long while, I felt alive again. We built a website, reached out to small vendors, offered services at a fraction of market prices. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't Instagram-worthy, but it was honest work. And it was mine. I didn't post pictures. I didn't announce it to the world. I just worked, quietly, consistently, and relentlessly, the way I had always worked. Except this time, I wasn't doing it for someone else's approval. I was building something for myself. And slowly it grew. Not overnight. Not by some miracle. Just through sweat, sacrifice, and persistence. I learned how to value my time again. I learned how to say no. And most importantly, I learned how to spot the difference between someone who loves you and someone who just loves what you can give. The world didn't applaud when I started again. There were no grand announcements, no pity parties, no viral videos cheering on the broken man trying to rebuild. It was quiet. Just the sound of my fingers typing late into the night, my eyes burning from hours of learning, fixing, pitching. The consulting business Marcus and I started was nothing more than a tiny spark in a dark tunnel at first. But I held on to it like a man clutching a lifeline. Every new client, every small win, it reminded me that I still had something to offer, that I wasn't disposable, that I mattered. 3 months in, we had our first breakthrough. A struggling restaurant owner in our city heard about our services from someone we'd helped for free. He was skeptical, but desperate. I stayed up with him for 3 nights straight, helping him rebrand, set up an online ordering system, and launch a targeted ad campaign. Within 2 weeks, his sales tripled. His joy, his disbelief, was the kind of fuel money can't buy. And when he handed me a bonus check without hesitation, I didn't feel like a charity case anymore. I felt like a man again. We scaled slowly, one client at a time, never promising more than we could deliver. Marcus handled outreach and networking. I handled operations and client success. We made a good team, but I kept my circle small. I didn't tell many people about the business, especially not her. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But as life would have it, peace often comes after people finally realize what they lost. Almost 2 years passed. I moved into a better apartment, finally cleared my debts, and even hired a small team of freelancers to help with the growing demand. Our business wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. We rebranded under a new name, Second Rise Media. Fitting, right? The man who was cast aside rose quietly, with no spotlight, and now held the keys to something real. Then came the night I saw her again. It was a charity gala downtown. Marcus had convinced me to go, said it would be good for business to mingle with some of the city's top executives and potential clients. I resisted, but eventually gave in. I wore a tailored navy suit, not to impress, but because it finally fit both my body and my spirit. I had earned the right to stand tall again. The ballroom was elegant, full of laughter, champagne, and subtle ego contests. And then I saw her, dressed in red, as always, standing beside that finance guy she had left me for. Her smile was still calculated, her gaze still scanning the room, always searching for who mattered most in any given moment. She hadn't seen me yet, but when she did, I knew instantly. Her smile faltered. She whispered something to the man beside her. He glanced my way, confused. Then she walked toward me slowly, cautiously, like someone unsure whether they were approaching a ghost or a god. "Wow, you look different," she said, her voice soft, almost nostalgic. I nodded politely. "So do you?" She laughed nervously. "I didn't expect to see you here." I tilted my head. "This is where business owners and donors gather, right?" She blinked. Her eyes flickered, doing the math in her head. "Oh, you're here with someone?" "I am," I said, pulling out my name badge and letting her read the line beneath it. Leon Rivers, co-founder, Second Rise Media. Her lips parted slightly. She had heard of the company. Everyone in town had. We had recently partnered with the local government to help digitize small businesses post-COVID. Our name was in newspapers. She just hadn't connected the dots. Until now. Her voice trembled, but she tried to play it cool. "I always knew you had potential. I just wish things had worked out differently." I smiled. Not bitterly, just truthfully. "No, you don't. You got what you wanted back then. So did I. You wanted perfection. I wanted love. You got your show. I got my silence. And look at us now." She looked away, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Yes, you did," I replied gently. "But it's okay. That hurt taught me everything I needed to know." She tried to say something else, but I stepped away. Not angrily, just peacefully. The kind of peace that comes when you realize you no longer have anything to prove. The kind of peace that doesn't need applause, just closure. I spent the rest of the evening meeting business owners, exchanging cards, and shaking hands with people who valued my mind, not my wallet. And for the first time in years, I went home not to a cold bed, but to a life I had built with my own hands. No lies, no illusions, just freedom. Weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that the finance guy had dumped her after losing his job. She tried to reach out, liked one of my business posts, sent a message that said, "Proud of you." I didn't reply, not out of bitterness, just out of respect for the man I had become. The man who no longer needed her validation. The man who learned the greatest revenge is becoming everything they said you'd never be. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Every click helps us bring more real stories to life. And remember, success is the best revenge, but healing is the real victory. See you in our next story.